Hi there, welcome. I'm Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and guess what? I have finished knitting my sailing sweater. There's a front piece and there's a back piece. Well, actually they are identical pieces, so I guess they're totally interchangeable. But as you can see right now, they don't look that great yet. They look kind of crumpled up, they're kind of sloppy looking, and so if I sewed the pieces together right now, it would look a little bit slapped together and not at all professional. So the key with knitting any garments and making them look nice in the end is to properly finish the garments. And so finishing techniques for knitting include everything from sewing up the pieces to weaving in the ends, and it also means blocking the knitted fabric in the way that you choose. For me, my blocking method of choice is typically wet blocking, so I'm going to show you how I do that. So basically the whole purpose of blocking is to take this piece of fabric and to get it to the right finished dimensions, and at the same time smoothing out the stitches, relaxing the yarn. And so what I like to do is I like to wet block, because by submerging this fabric into the water, it allows all of the yarns to sort of release the energy that's in them and relax and form what they're going to settle into their natural places. And so it won't look so crinkly at the end of the day. It'll look nice and smooth and flat. Okay, so typically what I do is I take a bowl, or actually it would be usually the bathroom sink is what I'm using. So I'm using the bathroom sink, filling it up with warm to hot water. In this case, I'm just going to use this bowl so that you can see what I'm doing. And in that warm to hot water, what I do is I add sort of a swirl of this soak. And soak is basically a cleanser that you don't need to rinse out. You would use it for your delicate laundry items and things like that. In this case, I typically use it for all of my hand woven stuff, all of my hand knit stuff. This one is Pineapple Grove. I think it's going to smell nice. Yep. And I just put a little swish in there. And then since these pieces are, well, they're going to fill up this tub, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do them individually. So I'm just going to take each one of these pieces and one by one pop them in the bowl. So I'm not really stretching or agitating or doing anything crazy with my fabric right now. I just want to get it nice and wet. So I'm just going to let it sit for a couple of minutes there. And you'll notice that what I've done here is I have not actually woven in my ends, because I'm going to need to use some of these ends for sewing up later. So that's why I keep these ends free. And then at the end of the process, whatever I have left, I'll weave in those ends. But if you were knitting a shawl or something like that and you don't have any other you don't need any yarn to sew up with, then I would weave in all the ends before doing this blocking process. So the other thing that you're going to need when you're blocking is you're going to need the schematic for your pattern. So in this particular pattern, the sailing sweater, there are only two sizes. There's the original size and there's a tall size. So the original size, she has a schematic here, says that it's supposed to be about 20 inches high. So it's supposed to be 20 inches from this top line to the bottom here. And then from side to side, it's supposed to be 40 inches in total. Okay, so now that you know your dimensions of what your piece is supposed to be, I'm going to show you a little bit about my particular blocking board. I feel very, very lucky that I have this blocking board. I got it probably about 15 years ago on eBay, and I don't even know if they make anything like this anymore, but basically it's a board that can be folded in half, and it's padded, it's sort of heat proof, it's all these things, but it also has a pre-printed grid on here. And so there are measurements in both centimeters and inches, and so I can see exactly how much space everything is going to take. So if you don't have a blocking board that has these grid markings on it, you can just use your tape measure to measure your garments as you're blocking them out. So now that I have let this soak for a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lift it up from the bottom, and I'm going to squeeze out all of the excess water. Whatever I can do, I'm going to squeeze out as much excess moisture as I can. Now I don't want to lift up and have this garment drag because it will stretch and deform your fabric. So you want to pull it up from underneath. So I'm just using my hands to squeeze out whatever I can. And so while we're going to work on this, I'm just going to take the other one here and I'm just going to pop that in the water too. Okay, so now this one, it's going to be pretty drippy wet still, so that's why I have my towel here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just use this towel to blot out all of the rest of the excess water. Whatever I can get rid of, I'm going to try and get rid of here before I start to pin things out. So typically, if I'm putting my garments into the bathroom sink and I'm letting it sit for probably about 5 or 10 minutes there in the water, in the hot water with the soak, and then I'll pull it out and I'll typically roll it up like so. I've got my garment in here, just rolling it up. And then I will step on it because that's the easiest way to get the most water out. So in this case, I'm just going to press on it here. But you just go from side to side and I try to remove as much excess water as I can using this towel. So it's much easier if you just pop it on the floor and then step on it. Okay, so then we're gonna remove it from the towel. So you can already see that the fabric is already a lot smoother. The lace stitches are already smoother to begin with. Now what I have to do is I have to get it to the right dimensions. Okay, so this is where I'm looking at my board. And what I need is, I need for this piece to be 40 inches wide overall and 20 inches high. So from here to here is 20 inches. So I'm gonna pop that here to this line. So I can see the grid marks on this board. You might not be able to see them because they're falling off the video, but let's see. Now 40 is here and here. So I'm gonna shuffle this over a little bit. She says it's about 12 inches from here, from this end of the sweater to the part where it's straight. So I'm gonna just, let's see here, this will be 12. And what I'm gonna do here is I just use plain old straight sewing pins to pin down my, my project. You might have better blocking pins, you might have T-pins. In this case, I'm just using Quilter's glass head pins, just very basic. You can get these at the supermarket, at the grocery store, or sewing stores, obviously. And so I basically just go through checking my schematic, making sure that I'm getting all the correct measurements that I need to get, and then going around the entire circumference of my knitted piece and putting in pins. Pins probably every 2 inches or so, and just trying to make it nice and smooth and even. And so you can see I'm kind of going around my piece, massaging it gently, very gently into place to try to get it to conform to the dimensions that I need it to be. Okay, great. So now that this is all pinned out, all I need to do is I let it dry probably about overnight, and then it'll be ready and smooth and flat and ready to sew up. So that is basically how I wet block. And once this piece is finished and dry, I'm going to do the same with the second piece. And then we'll see the finished sweater at the end of all of this. Hi, welcome back. So it looks like we let this whole thing dry overnight, and the whole thing is dry. So all I have to do now is I'm just going to take out all of the pins, remove all the pins, and then I'm going to release the piece here. So there you have it. One nice, super flat, super smooth piece of lace knitting. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing with the other piece and just pin it out to the exact same dimensions, and then I can sew them together once they're all dry. Okay, so I don't want you to worry if you don't have a blocking board like this. This is absolutely, it's a bit of a luxury. It's not a necessity. You can absolutely block using foam. There's like little foam pads that you can get either from the hardware store, or you can get them from a knitting supply place as well. But I have also just blocked pieces on my bed. I've blocked things on hotel beds. You can block things on the floor. Just put a clean towel on the floor to make sure that it catches, you know, any of the moisture, all of that kind of stuff. And then you can just lay your piece out on that towel, either on the floor, on some foam blocks, or on the bed. You don't need a blocking board like this, but it is a nice to have if you do. So that is basically it about how I block my knitting. And absolutely, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop your questions down below and let me know if this is how you do your blocking or if you do it in some other way. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.